Good evening, colleagues. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to see so many faces. I think those other AEASA ManCom members should help me, but I think this is the first Tomlison lecture that we have since COVID, because this one was the one that should have been arranged by ManCom. So it was based on the half-day online conference that we had in 2020, if I recall. So welcome and thank you for joining us. I would also just like to acknowledge my Vice President, Sofiso, in the room. Thank you, Sofiso, for making that. And then some other distinguished guests that we have, and then also Simpiwe, our past president, or past vice president, rather. He was the one that put me in the hot seat since last year, so thank you for that, Simpiwe. Colleagues, I also just want to acknowledge some of our sponsors for this evening. All the technology should just work with me. So some of our sponsors for this evening, of course, Stellenbosch University for making the venue available to us. BFAB that graciously sponsored our food. You probably have seen some of the nice snack platters outside, so thank you BFAB for that. And then AEASA for sponsoring the lovely wine that we are already enjoying. I also just want to note, especially for the online audience, we are recording the session. So if you are not willing to participate, please leave the meeting. And then I think many of the youngsters in the room don't know anything about AEASA. I've invited quite a number of students. I thought maybe just to introduce the organization or the association, but before that, maybe I should just introduce myself. I'm Melissa van der Merwe. I'm the president of AEASA. I think outgoing president at this point. There will be a new president elected in September during our conference. And I hope to then leave the association in very capable hands. So the association was founded in 1961, and we are a membership-based organization for agricultural economists. And we do quite a bit in terms of promoting training, education, research. We do support some of the colleagues that work in the private sector, public sector. We try to really grow the discipline as well. So try to also be the bridge between the university and then industry to help support students in finding jobs ultimately. Our big event is the conference. This year it's hosted in Elangeni in Durban. So registrations are still open. If you have not registered yet, you can scan the QR code and then just register for the conference. It's promising to be a great event, a joint conference between us and the African Association. We have great keynote speakers, one of which is Jill McCluskey. She's going to talk a bit about alternative proteins and all the new research on that front. And then I also briefly want to talk about not necessarily the women of the hour. I'll leave that to Dirk a little bit later, but I want to speak about the man of the hour. So I've known about Prof. F.R. Tomlison and I've heard about him, but I haven't really understood what he was about and what he stood for. So I did a little bit of research and it was quite interesting to delve a little bit into his contribution towards the discipline. And what I basically found was that he was a great guy. So he was literally the founding father of the agricultural economics profession. He has 3 honorary doctorates by various universities. He has a PhD from Cornell. He has a doctorate from the University of Stellenbosch, ultimately, or rather the University of Pretoria, then University of Stellenbosch, Free State, and Pretoria awarded him with honorary doctorates. He was in various committees. He held many different positions. Later on, he went on to become an academic, where he also made numerous contributions in terms of supervision of PhDs, master students, publications, and the list goes on. He also received many awards himself as well for his contribution. And based on that, Professor Johan van Rooyen, I think most of you will know him at least, especially the younger students, and Gerard Bakkeberg decided to commemorate him whilst he was still alive, which I think is honorable because oftentimes we only commemorate people when they are not with us anymore. So he was the first one to present the F.R. Tomlison lecture in 1986. That's the year I was born. So I was about a few months old when he he presented his first lecture. And since then, every year, AEASA had the Tomlison commemorative lecture. And it's usually something that is awarded to one of the very notable agricultural economists in the industry, or the private sector, public sector, or academia. We've had a number of professors presenting this award, but I think this year it's very fitting that we have selected Bongiswa to do this award for us, or this lecture for us. And I think because it's Women's Month, it's even more fitting. So Bongiswa, thank you for being willing to do this. I know it's hard work. And I'm going to allow or ask Dirk to please say a few words about Bongiswa as an introduction before we listen to her lecture. Thank you, Dirk.
Good evening, colleagues. It is really for me a great honor to introduce Bongiswa this evening. I've known Bongiswa since 1999, when we were both much younger. Those of you that don't know, we are both from the Eastern Cape, grew up not very far from each other. So we are both incomers or refugees from the Eastern Cape into the Western Cape, but we've stayed here. Now, Bongiswa grew up in a small place called Kofimbaba, if I'm correct, or close to Kofimbaba in a rural village in that area. She made matric in 1992, and Bongiswa, if I'm correct, you first went into nursing for about 2 weeks or something like teaching. Teaching for about 2 weeks, and then she decided that's not for her. So she studied at Fort Hare, and there she completed actually 2 degrees. And her BSc was awarded in 1999. She then migrated to the Western Cape, and she has never left. You know, she only went there over weekends or over holidays. She completed a master's in 2002 on organic farming, for all things. And then she became division head of marketing in 2004. She joined the department in 2000. She became division head of marketing in 2004, and about 2007, she became director agricultural economics. So typically women in Women's Month, you know, she took the opportunities that were given to her, and she actually took the leadership role. I think for me in Bongiswa, there are a few things standing out. The one is she was chairperson of AEASA. I think that is a very great honor for somebody to be chairperson of AEASA. She took the initiative in market access from the department. You know, when you go to any farmers association and you ask them what do they want, they normally tell 2 things. The one is the condition of the roads. Okay, now we can't do anything about the condition of the roads, but in the Western Cape they talk about market access and market opportunities, and to get that right. And in that space, Bongiswa has played a very important role. But for me, more important than that is the leadership role that she's been playing. Leadership in terms of amongst agricultural economists in the various provinces. When you talk about agricultural economics in all 9 provinces, you know, and that fraternity, Bongiswa is standing out as a leader there. The second is that she's also standing out as a role model for young people in the agricultural sector, or young people, you know, that aspire to a new career. And there Bongiswa stands out. And also for other people in the department, I think she's also a role model. I don't want to say a role model, but a lot of people, let's say peers and also seniors, are looking up to Bongiswa and taking her as an example of somebody who at some stage got an opportunity, took that opportunity, and make something out of that opportunity. So Melissa, can I just say hand over to Bongiswa, or do you want to have the honor to say? Okay, Bongiswa, over to you.
Let's check if this is going to work. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Yeah, that's better. Colleagues, I think before I should start, let me do the honorable thing and respect a few people that are actually here today. I've got my Deputy Director General, Dr. Ilza Trotman, who's also my boss. I take note, in the room that there are actually various CEOs that are actually in this room. I saw Yanis Stradom, the CEO of AgriVesCap. I saw Sean Welsh from Cap Agri. Yes, how can I forget that? Cap Agri. And I see the president of the Agricultural Research Council among us. That is actually Dr. Lita Maginga. I see the CEO of the National Agricultural Marketing Council, who is actually also the past president of AEASA. Okay, all right. I remember. We will talk about it afterwards, right? I also see quite a few senior people, and I must mention that I really feel honored that the office of the National Minister of Agriculture, Minister Togo Didiza, is here. The Chief of Staff decided to leave everything and to come here and actually join us today. I see also the senior management of the Agricultural Marketing Council. And I hope I'm actually not going to be missing anyone. Dirk, you also need actually to be given your honor as the senior management within the Western Cape Department of Agriculture. And all the people that are actually here in attendance today, I hope I'm not actually leaving anyone, in terms of those acknowledgements. But I think I actually want to specially, acknowledge the presidents of the international associations that are actually amongst us here. Here is Prof. Fenk. Sometimes we often think of him actually as the past president of AEASA, and he's been the president actually of the International Association, and I want actually to acknowledge that. And I am actually also acknowledging, the president of the association, AEASA, and Lita, even though you are the president, but you are the president at the ARC, you've been the president actually of the association, as well. And of course, I've got my VP here. There is no way that I cannot actually, acknowledge actually my vice president, Dr. Ntombela, who is actually also here. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope I am actually not leaving anyone behind, but if I've actually left you, please forgive me. But I am actually acknowledging all of you for being here. And I am actually truly honored because I really didn't know that this room is actually going to be full house like this. And I must actually also take note of the fact that there are delegates that are actually online. And I'm actually also, acknowledging them, and I'm actually greeting them. And I'm really grateful that they actually also are in attendance. Just on the opening remarks, in terms of actually of the topic itself, let me get to the topics. It's the responsiveness of public sector agricultural economists to evolving industry needs. That's mouthful. My DDG, I had to do it actually in this branding. I requested my head of communications actually on how do I do co-branding. And I made it a point that I send the slide so that it actually looks, okay. And there is a reason why I'm doing it actually in this branding. I know AEASA is actually not going to beat me for that. Right? Colleagues, this is actually going to be the structure of the topic itself. And really, I'm not going to go into the details actually of what's actually in the contents. At least you can actually read for yourself of what actually the contents are actually all about. In terms of the opening remarks, let me first say it's an honor to be nominated to give this lecture. This I'm not quite sure. Sorry, colleagues, I'm not quite sure if this is on. Sorry about that. It is an honor to be nominated to give this lecture bestowed to one of the renowned agricultural economists, that is actually Professor Tomlison, who is also considered to be the father of agricultural economics in South Africa. Melissa, you've done the best honor for me in introducing actually what he stood for and who he was. And thank you very much for that. But I must actually also, really indicate that I'm actually dedicating this lecture to my parents who really believed in me at a very young age. And they were actually subsistence farmers in the rural areas of the Eastern Cape. Dirk actually has mentioned that. And this is where I'm now confirming to all of you that I am actually a daughter of a farmer and that I am actually a proud product of agriculture because my education was partly financed through the proceeds that were actually coming from farming. And therefore, I'm really qualified to say all the hashtags that I can say, but there is one that I know we love in my department, that is hashtag for the love of agriculture. Talking about subsistence and smallholder farming also makes me to think about Professor Tomlison himself, because I know he was actually famous for one commission of inquiry that he was actually leading, where they were actually having to look into the socio-economic development of the Bantu areas in the early 1950s. I thought of him when I'm talking about smallholder farmers and actually also subsistence. And he really, in an attempt to try and think, I wonder whether there has been progress since they've done actually that inquiry. And I don't know, perhaps maybe if he was around, I was actually going to be asking him that question. But unfortunately, he is not here anymore. But I've got the professors in here, they can tell me afterwards. And Professor Tomlison himself, colleagues, is part actually of the history of AEASA. And I think I must actually mention today that the history of the association will be rewritten. But it will be rewritten actually with my name next to it. And as a second woman giving this lecture, but as a first Black woman that is actually giving this lecture since AEASA was actually established in 1961. And I am really deeply honored. I must also dedicate this lecture to women that have been working the land and the women that are still working the land in an attempt to try and actually feed their families while their husbands are actually somewhere else. And, trying actually to look actually for the greener pastures so that they can actually make a living. And I am saying this because this is actually Women's Month. Colleagues, I am coming from the family of farming. People might not understand. I really am in love with agriculture. And I know farming. I know what my mom used to do because you used actually to be one of those people that were really, farming and in an attempt really to try and look, after us. And I am actually mentioning this. And Melissa, I've chosen this month because it is the Women's Month. Preparing and presenting this lecture, ladies and gentlemen, it places a very huge responsibility because when you get to think about it, you get to think about the people that have done it actually before you. And that includes Professor Tomlinson himself and some of the people that are actually around this room that actually have given, this lecture before. But this time around, it actually has come to me and I don't have a choice. But thinking of today's lecture, I actually had to dig deep and had to ask myself a very hard question on why do I exist as an agricultural economist, especially in the space where I am in the public sector. I also had to ask a question. If we are not there as agricultural economists, will the people of this province, when I mean people, I mean actually the sector, will they miss us? I think we all, at some point, have to sit back and actually ask ourselves these type of questions, actually where we are. Setting the scene, We know that for an public sector to be effective, it is characterized actually by the ability to deliver quality public services consistently and in line with the preferences actually of the citizens. And our role in the public sector is to create an enabling environment so that the private sector can flourish. Whilst at the same time, we are actually also managing the fiscal resources in a responsible manner. I must mention that the majority of African states are also confronted with many challenges that impede economic growth, the alleviation of hunger and job creation, especially youth, because youth actually accounts actually for a significant share of the total population. As a result, African heads of states made actually a commitment under the Maputo Declaration to set aside 10% of their national budgets. I know there was once a calculation that was actually being done, whether this is really happening in practice, but I really do not think it is, but that was actually the attempt. If I come here at home in South Africa, we've got a National Development Plan, which is still a very great plan. And when we talk about the NDP as agriculturalists, we often look actually at chapter 6. That actually talks about the inclusive rural economy through creation of jobs in primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors that are actually linked to agriculture. Therefore, achieving these targets depends on effective collaboration between all different role players, and that includes the public sector, the private sector, and the civil society. Therefore, their responsiveness is also very crucial in implementation. Also within the sector, I must actually mention that agriculture is one sector that is actually characterized actually by constraints. And some of those constraints is actually limited natural resources, and I'm referring mainly to land and water in this regard, access to capital, the relevant technologies, market access, and scarce human capital, among others. The agricultural sector, again, is vulnerable to ecological changes. And I'm actually thinking of climate change in this space. We are actually confronted in the agricultural sector with actually many diseases. Some of them are actually new and actually very complex. And often, they actually are attributed actually to climate change. In the recent years, colleagues, we actually observe more changes that are continuing to shape the agricultural environment. And among those is actually the economic shocks. I'm thinking actually of escalating inflation in this regard, technology and innovation, the social demographic changes, the politics. In South Africa, we often hear a lot actually about corruption. We know that there is actually also instability. We know about geopolitics that are actually, shaping, the global environment. Therefore, in all these things that I've actually mentioned, agricultural economics as a profession, they actually have got more, to be responsible for. But unfortunately, agricultural economics actually on their own, they cannot actually be able to do everything under the complex environment. Therefore, they need actually to apply interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approaches to be able to, work actually on these issues that I've actually highlighted. Also, I must indicate that as the world is changing, the agricultural sector is actually also changing, and therefore its needs are actually also changing. Our field is also not left behind. Our field actually has been evolving. And I can actually recall, a lecture that was actually given by Professor Karan. I know also Professor Kirsten, in his Tomlison lecture, he actually also talked actually about these changes, in our field. And therefore, actually having a look at the 21st century, the period really suggests that we should actually expect more complexities. And it is actually in that space that we all got to reflect. Therefore, in my reflection, I had actually to choose this topic, the responsiveness of the public sector agricultural economics to evolving industry needs. Of course, I'm actually working in the Western Cape. I'm going to be leaning more, on the Western Cape in actually talking about this. I am addressing or talking actually about all these issues because we are agricultural economists actually in the room, and these are the issues that we actually have to ponder about actually as, the profession. In the background, I hope this is actually. I think there is actually an issue with the alignment actually in terms of the slides, but let's see how we go about it. In terms actually of the background, colleagues, I actually had to start to the Constitution of South Africa, and especially Section 40 of the Constitution, which prescribes the 3 spheres of government. That is actually our national, provincial, and actually local government. And the various sections actually of the Constitution. Okay. Those are the joys of actually having the online, right? Okay. Okay, to mute them. Has put down, and on the list I can see our financing, marketing infrastructure, the promotion of agricultural marketing. And Rian, you are here, my colleague, rendering of agricultural statistical services. It is actually on the functions actually of provincial government. And there is one that we often do not actually really get it right, or we don't actually understand it fully, the last one, determination of agricultural economic policy. And I believe that's actually a topic actually on its own, because I really do not know what space do we actually really have as provinces actually in that space actually of determining the policy. Still on the background, in 2003, after the roles were actually given to the provinces, the National Treasury prescribed a uniform structure for all provincial departments. And I am actually talking in particular here about program agricultural economics. If you go into all the provincial departments of agriculture, you will realize that we all are actually having the same structure, because it is prescribed, it is required actually for all of us actually to be reporting in this manner. We've got the 3 sub-programs, that is production economics and marketing. We've got a new kid on the block. I'm saying it's new because it was actually only established in 2019 or 2018, if I'm not mistaken, agro-processing support, and then the macroeconomic support. We've got a purpose which is uniform for all of us. Each and every of those sub-programs, we all actually have got the very same purpose because it is actually prescribed. Going further on the topic, there is no way that I can talk about what I'm talking about without actually touching on the role of public sector agricultural economists. Therefore, agricultural economists play a key role in improving the profitability of agricultural activities and agribusiness. And the agricultural economics profession in the public sector, it dates back in the 1920s. And Prof, I think this is you that was actually writing this. I didn't know, but I felt it's actually very important for me actually to talk about it because I didn't know that in the 1920s already there was actually a division called Economics actually and Marketing within the National Department of Agriculture. So it's very important actually for us actually to know that. And also, you know, to take note of the fact that policy and trade analysis are some actually of the major areas of importance for agricultural economics that are actually practicing in South Africa. There was actually an external evaluation that was commissioned by our department where our program was being evaluated. And on that evaluation, there was actually a comparison and a benchmarking that was done for our Western Cape Department of Agricultural Economic Services. And a few issues actually there were highlighted. And within that scope, the outcomes that were actually highlighted were that we need actually to focus on commodity supply, the demand and actually price projections, food safety, global markets, trade, resource actually and environmental economics, and also including development and rural economics. Some of these things actually, as people are presenting actually the various lectures, we do actually come across them. But issues of food safety, I never knew that those are the things that we actually also need actually to take into consideration. Resource economics is there, trade is actually there, but perhaps maybe we are not necessarily giving, you know, the extent that we need to give in all these areas. What also came out strongly in there was the fact that the public sector agricultural economists must also provide the objective and reliable data in relation to production costs and commodity prices. That's actually what the study said. Therefore, the Western Cape Department of actually Agricultural Economics was also benchmarked with other similar programs in all the 8. In fact, the request actually went to all the 9 provinces, but only 8 provinces that actually responded, you know, onto the evaluation. And from that assessment, it was found that actually the provinces, they do not offer economic modeling as the area. They are not actually also working on authoring actually of journals and actually other articles. And it was also discovered that less than 50% actually of the provinces were providing resource economics, trade analysis, and labor or demographic analysis. And from that analysis, it became apparent that with the Western Cape Department of Agriculture, Program 6 is offering the widest range actually of services in the public sector. Therefore, to remain relevant, the agricultural economics, they need to continually adapt to the changes in the socio-economic challenges and opportunities as supported actually by the application of new information and communication technologies. So those are some of the things that actually came out of that study. The research approach that I've actually followed when I was preparing actually for this lecture was actually to look at various studies that were conducted by the department. Our department is known for doing evaluations. And Derek, I must actually confess, you know, I really never knew that there is such actually wealth actually of information that is contained actually on those evaluations, even though I was actually part of the process. Therefore, the external evaluations that we looked at in here is a diagnostic and a design evaluation that was actually done for our program, as I actually indicated, and also the diagnostic evaluation of services needs of different farmer categories that was done in 2014. There is a current study that they actually are busy with, but it's still at a very, you know, early stage. There was also a study on stakeholder perceptions of communications, programs and actually services actually of the Western Cape Department of Agriculture that was done in 2017. There are also various evaluations that were done on land reform. I think the first one was done in 2014 and the second one was done actually in 2018. So in assessing this responsiveness, those are actually the studies really that were actually a solid backup actually for me to ascertain this. And internally as the program, we do actually have got various databases that we're actually making use of, where we actually get to capture information daily and we capture information actually on them quarterly and also, you know, on an annual basis. So those are all the elements that I've actually looked at actually in putting together what I am actually sharing with you today. You know, I could not actually give this picture first because what we do as the department is also informed about the structure of agriculture within South Africa. The Western Cape is completely different to the rest actually of the provinces. It's highly commercialized. We can see, you know, in terms of the gross income, horticulture is actually the major category and animals actually being the second one and field crops actually to a lesser extent. While if you actually get to compare this actually with national, the animal category is actually quite huge actually at a national level, while horticulture is actually quite small. But I must actually mention, you know, when I'm talking actually about the uniqueness actually of the Western Cape agriculture, it's also very export oriented and really contributes more than 50% to the national primary agricultural exports. And those are the things, you know, that unfortunately there is no way that we are in a situation where we can actually do what actually other provinces are doing because of this uniqueness. In reviewing these studies, the first one, which is actually the service needs actually of different farmer categories in the Western Cape. This evaluation, you know, actually looked, or let me say the farming community was actually categorized in various classification. That is actually your subsistence, your smallholder, and commercial farmers. When they were actually doing this evaluation, there were so many people that were actually conducted. And if you actually get to see the categorization of who was actually involved in that study, we can see that the commercial sector was largely represented actually in here because you've got your small commercial, you've got your medium commercial, you've got your large commercial, while you also actually have got your smallholder commercial. So there were actually quite a number of actually people that were involved, you know, in this. And the key findings coming actually from that study were that subsistence and smallholder farmers, they largely depend on their efficiency on agricultural extension services within government. And when I say agricultural extension, I mean all inclusive because agricultural economics is also part actually of extension to a larger extent. They also categorize the various, you know, requirements or needs. And in terms of technological transfer, agricultural economics, especially the information on minimum wage, is what actually is required actually by commercial farmers, especially in the horticultural sector. Marketing was actually also highlighted, where the marketing issues actually specifically mentioned are very much actually commodity specific. For instance, you know, there will actually be into wine, there will actually be livestock information that is required actually in that space. Farm planning needs. There were actually quite a few needs that were actually mentioned under this. And what actually became very clear is that all the commercial farmer typologies, they indicated a service need to develop independent crop and livestock budgets. And that is actually the work that actually agricultural economics actually are doing. The guide to machinery costs as a need was also mentioned actually in there. The assistance actually with applications for funding with either commercial or grant funding was actually also highlighted as a need by the farmers in this category. In detail, talking actually about market access, the majority of smallholder farmers, they really, did emphasize a need actually for assistance, especially for them to access the local market. The issues of compliance, I mentioned actually food safety here. Food safety is one area where we actually get to get involved, and we never actually really knew that those are the things that agricultural economics can actually look at. Therefore, compliance actually also was mentioned across all different levels actually of farmers. Livestock farmers, also mentioned that they actually are in need actually of market information, especially to access the informal markets. And commercial farmers, I must mention that they are also placing a greater need on maintaining the existing and in growing the new markets. And there is also market access information that is of strategic actually in nature, where fruit and wine farmers really did actually indicate an indication that they would actually love to actually get information on market information and strategic information. Commercial farmers emphasizing the need for services and actions to improve the image of agriculture, mainly to attract the youth and also to attract investment within the sector. And the large commercial farmers expressing a greater interest on strategic information as well. So the work or the information that BFAP is usually supplying is falling under this category. Under the resource acquisition, some farmers actually indicated that they would love financial advice, information that is actually also very commodity specific, focusing mainly on that need was actually coming mainly from the medium and actually commercial farmers. In terms actually of the study that was done in evaluating our services, when I say our services, that is actually the services actually of program agricultural economics. That was actually an independent study that was done. And there were a total of 300 respondents actually in there. You can really see the breakdown actually of the people that were actually involved in the study. The huge, component actually of commercial sector. We can see government agencies, the farmer industries, academia, the private sector users. So this is actually quite diverse in terms of the people that participated. And in terms of the results that actually came out of that study, in terms actually of overall satisfaction, it's clear the services that are actually highlighted actually in here, really they didn't actually come out badly. So you've got trend reports, you've got market research. You can actually read further down as you actually are checking actually this. So this was actually the satisfaction. So sorry, the level that actually the people that were actually interviewed, indicated their satisfaction actually of the services that we provide as actually the program within the Western Cape Department of Agriculture. When I was actually looking into the stakeholder perceptions on the services of agricultural economics in the Western Cape, the study was for the department, but I looked in particular the area that actually talks to agricultural economics. And on this study, again, you can actually also see who the participants were. And from the people, that really participated, it's clear, commodity organizations are very much aware of the services that we provide, following by our extension officers who are actually internal, the smallholder farmers and commercial farmers. But we didn't really do that well on agri-processing. I want us to take note that this study was actually done in 2017. And I think I mentioned that we actually have one kid on the block in terms of the sub-programs, that is agri-processing. This study was done before the agri-processing sub-program was established within the department. In terms actually of the stakeholders using actually our information, we could see that smallholder farmers really are just one category that is actually making use of our services a lot. Of course, advisory services or our extension officers are making use actually of our information. But I was also pleased actually to see that commercial farmers are also making use actually of our information, because I would not love us to be the department of smallholder farmers, because we are there as a department and are responsible for all farmers of the Western Cape. If you're now talking actually of the specific services that are actually, are provided, and you can actually also see the and who is using, which information. You can see the group is actually quite spread. And I see financial record keeping is actually quite popular here. I see the budgets are also quite popular. The information on financial advice, market research, and facilitation actually of market access are those, services, especially from the small holders. But again, you can actually also see the extension officers, what type of information they are making use of, and also the commercial farmers, what type of information they are actually making use of. Internally, things we do for continuous monitoring of responsiveness. As I indicated that in 2016 and 2017, that, there was actually an evaluation done. There were quite a few gaps that were also identified in that study. And there were actually areas of improvement that were actually indicated. And among those areas of improvement, agri-processing was actually highlighted as one area where we actually need actually to pay, proper attention. It was also requested or indicated that we need actually to improve awareness, of our services into the entire agricultural sector. Of course, awareness is there, but it's clear there's still quite a huge contingent actually of people that are not really aware of the services that we actually provide. So we could actually do better, in there. And also for us actually to improve the access to services by emerging farmers. But to date, I can mention that some of these gaps that were actually identified, really, I think we did actually make an attempt to address them, as there are services that really are targeted at emerging growers. Market access program, financial record keeping program, those are direct interventions that are really addressing the issues actually of smallholder farmers. I'm just actually making an example. I've mentioned actually agri-processing, that it actually became a sub-program. We are now actually also, providing services to the agri-processing sector. So I presume if we can actually go back again, perhaps maybe the situation might actually look different, or the picture might look different than actually what you saw. On the next slide, I will actually be showing, what we actually measure as the program. This table became really, really busy. It actually had numbers actually on it, but I just couldn't capture all of it, because we actually started tracking, our outputs from 2017 up until, 2023. It just became very, very, very busy. So I thought to myself, let me at least just actually share, the indicators to you. So at least if you get to read the paper, when it's actually completed, you will actually be able to see everything. So those are the indicators that we actually get to report on as program agricultural economics. It's a lot of indicators, colleagues, I must actually mention. You did actually, hear me saying that in terms actually of the services that we provide, it was actually highlighted that as the province, we are providing actually a wider range of services compared actually to our counterparts actually in other provinces. But what we did in here was really to try and clamp the services, that we provide in this manner. That is actually for you to see, our outputs, how do they look like? And we actually started actually counting these from 2017. It's a snapshot. It's not everything. But I thought it is actually a very good exercise when one actually talks actually of monitoring, and you are actually also trying to check your responsiveness. I've got dedicated people here like Rian Nowers that really keeps actually a lot of databases, and he loves, these kind of things. And honestly, then he actually became a very good source when I actually had to put actually these things actually together. There is also, in checking actually our responsiveness, we've got a database of inquiries within the program. Every inquiry that we get actually to log it in. For one reason, that inquiry, we respond to it if we're actually able to respond. We refer it if we're actually able to refer. But that database is actually what also gets to indicate to us where the gaps are, what type of information is required from us. And you can see on the analysis actually in here, I believe this database is actually more than 10 years old. But again, I sort of, did actually a snapshot between 2018 and actually 2022. And you can see the nature of the clients that, or let me say the people that actually get to request the information from us, the various categories. It's a wide range of clients, colleagues. It's the departments, let me say within our own department, the other departments within the province and actually also nationally, organized agriculture, the ministry, it really keeps us actually busy. The consultants, they are also keeping us really busy. There are also financial institutions. Prof, academia is on the list. I don't know if it's students. I suspect that it's actually students that probably actually are looking for information. And of course, our farmers are actually also on the list actually, and the media. That is really trying actually to try and see if we are really responsive. Just actually to give you the theme, this is actually the nature of the themes that came up just only actually on one quarter, that we're actually analyzing with actually the inquiries that actually get requested from us. I don't know, there was actually a lot of people that were looking actually for prices for a change. You can see we are not very much actually a very big, pork, producing province, but pork, information was requested actually from us left, right, and center, as you can actually see. But this is actually the type of things that we actually get to do, and we have to keep on doing this so that we can actually make sure, or let me say, keep on checking our relevance and whether actually are we able to provide the information that actually our clients are actually expecting from us. We also try and keep information on how do we get to provide this information. I indicated that this is really a snapshot. There's actually quite a lot of things that we actually are doing. Exhibitions, Derek, I don't think they're actually on this list because we actually attend a lot of exhibitions, but this was really a snapshot that we actually did actually in here. Checking actually on how our information was actually delivered between 2018 and actually 2022. And emails, we're still very traditional. It's very clear. Internet, also very popular, where we actually put our information. We've got the flash screens actually within the department, not only in the department, in all the districts, where our departmental offices actually are, and not actually the smaller offices, but the main offices. Trying to conclude, colleagues, so that I don't actually keep you here for long. Looking actually into the responsiveness of the public sector, it's very important actually for agricultural economics that they must remain providing the timely and relevant agricultural economic services. And as agricultural economics within the department, we are just only a handful. It's only a few of us. But I think I am actually pleased to see that on all the studies that we've actually analyzed, the one that I actually didn't pick up actually in here was actually the one on land reform. When I checked actually the studies actually on land reform, I could pick up, especially under economic viability, where most actually of our services are actually being indicated as indicators. We actually have done well in those categories, both actually in the 2014 study and actually also in the 2018 study. So it's clear if one is actually checking, we are not actually really doing bad actually as a public sector. Or let me say, as a public sector economist within the Western Cape Department of Agriculture, I must clarify this. And colleagues, the role of agricultural economists is actually still very critical in the public sector, especially to ensure the profitability of agricultural activities and agribusiness, especially those with limited resources. You've heard me when I was actually saying that most of the people that are making use of our services are extension officers, sorry, smallholder farmers. Ensuring the relevant of agricultural economic fields, it requires actually adaptation to social, economic, and environmental factors influencing the needs actually of the sector. I did mention that the world is changing. We cannot remain static. We actually also have to move up actually with the changes. And that is not only talking to public sector economists. It does also talk actually to the training institutions, that are actually providing training, because if the world is changing and there are new things that are actually required, also the training institutions, also they need actually also to remain relevant. I know it's not that easy to change curricula, but they will actually constantly actually have to check the curricula against actually the changes that we're actually experiencing as well. Also, for continuous improvement, the relevance and responsiveness, it's going to be very important actually for the public sector to invest in external evaluations. I do not know what other provinces are doing, but as the Western Cape Department of Agriculture, we really actually pride ourselves actually in doing evaluations. And we are actually priding ourselves. I know they cost money, but that's actually where we actually get to improve where we're actually not doing well. And if I'm talking of responsiveness, it's very imperative, that we should actually keep on, doing that. And by the way, undergoing external evaluation, it's not a nice thing, because other people are actually scared that you're gonna find something wrong about them. And I can tell you, it's one thing that I'm actually not scared of, because it can actually just make you to improve and actually even do better. So I would actually encourage, this is not only a public sector issue, it is actually, for even those that are actually in the private sector, it's a very good practice. To remain responsive, I must actually highlight that collaborations and partnerships with the private sector will always be important. There is no way that we can actually be able to do everything ourselves. And even now, we are not actually doing everything actually ourselves. We really pride ourselves actually as a department and actually also as a program with a lot actually of partnerships that we have with the private sector. And probably even, the indication of actually these better services that we seem actually to be providing is probably not actually only us, it's also those that we're actually also providing in collaboration with the private sector. And I must actually highlight that the role actually of policy and trade analysis, it will always be very important among agricultural economists in the public sector. This is almost towards the end. But I cannot end this talk without actually doing some few acknowledgements. And really the first acknowledgement that I would love to give is to the AEASA management, really for their nomination, putting their trust in me, and really believing in me. Melissa, I know you probably were actually very scared, not knowing whether I'm actually gonna accept, and also not knowing whether this day is actually gonna come, or am I gonna postpone to say, let's do it next year. But I couldn't keep you waiting. Of course, my family, I need actually to acknowledge them, especially my husband. He's sitting there at the back. For all the support and enduring all that is actually associated with the career woman. Because there are sleepless nights, like this one, I don't think I did sleep well. But unfortunately, he actually has to endure that because he actually has got a working wife. My son, that I'm actually robbing him for all the hours. But I can tell you that gentleman over there is very understanding. And we've got our own way, of setting actually our scores. There's no way that I can actually do acknowledgements without actually mentioning my department colleagues. And that is actually also one reason that I decided actually to go with the branding that I've actually chosen and not actually only using the AEASA branding. My department is actually very, very, very supportive. Most of you, we attend conferences. Some people in other departments are actually not so lucky. But we've got actually an extending senior management. And that is not only to the current one. I'm talking even about the ex, bosses that I actually had. They always allow us actually to attend the AEASA conferences. And not only attending the conferences, but also supporting the association. When we go to them with the proposals, and we know that the association is in need, they listen to us, and they do provide that kind of support. I am really thankful, Ilza, and I hope you are going to be conveying that actually also to the HOD. And to my mentors, Dirk, there's no way that I can acknowledge people in here without actually specifically mentioning your name, because you played a very, very, very important role. And from the first day that I've actually joined Elsenburg, you are the person that it was very difficult. I must mention, Afrikaans was very foreign. It started with me at the University of Stellenbosch. But I know when we joined actually the faculty, Prof, there were people that couldn't even speak a word of English. But with time, things actually got to change. Even in our own department, actually at Elsenburg, I saw people improving. People started actually talking English. But I must say they robbed me, because I also wanted to speak Afrikaans like the way they wanted actually to speak English. But yeah, I'm getting in there. I'm not that bad in Afrikaans anymore. Prof, you are one of the silent mentors. I know at times you actually get to scold this. Some people, they can't take kindly to it, but I'm the one that actually gets to enjoy when you're actually scolding me, because I know you are honest. You took a chance, eh? You really took a chance by allowing actually a black student actually to come to your faculty. I presume I was the first one. And that actually makes me also to remember Mrs. Nell. That was actually also in the team. Because in as much as you were actually there, I also had Mrs. Nell as a mother on the other side to look after me. And to my fellow colleagues within Program 6, that is my second family colleagues. Those are my anchors. Those are the people that I actually get to throw things at them and they are not actually complaining. And I am really thanking them actually for their support all the time. I'm talking to the current and the ex. I see Lois actually sitting there at the back. To my fellow colleagues in the agricultural economics family, those are the people that I actually get to share ideas with and sometimes also get to share frustrations. And they actually are always actually in support. And some of them are here, and I really feel honored, for them coming all the way actually from Pretoria actually to be here for this lecture today. Some of them, they call me Madam President. It seems I can never stop actually being a president while I'm actually no longer one. Some, they call me Sister Bongs, and some, they call me Sisi. So those are the people that really, are here today and came, just actually for only this lecture. The list is endless, people. But if I've not actually mentioned your name, please forgive me. But I just actually want to indicate that you are actually still very important to me. And also all the people that are actually here in attendance. I really appreciate you attending this lecture. That actually is something that is very special and dear to me. Thank you very much. I think that is the end of it.
Thanks, Bongiswa. Good evening, everyone. I don't know if Bongiswa knows that I'm just quickly going to share just a few thoughts with her. Now, when my name is Lopina and I represent BFAP, the Bureau for Food and Agricultural Policy, sponsoring this event. And of course, we are very focused and thankful for all the work, within the association, and obviously want to contribute in that space as well. So we're very happy and privileged to sponsor tonight. But actually also want to hijack this opportunity because not only are we the sponsor, but I'm also personally, so Bongiswa was my boss for 8 years. And it's really great to just say one or two things about her. especially on this special night where we really can celebrate, the work that she's been doing. And colleagues really talking about long hours and the way that Bongiswa is focused on making a difference is something I really want to just quickly speak about. And it's really a privilege for me to do that. Now, just based on what Bongiswa shared with us tonight, I can confirm through 8 years of long hours and an awesome time working in the public sector. Now, many people, when you say to them, I'm going to start working at the public sector, in their mind, they see someone at, at the post office, or someone sitting at, you go for your passport and just sitting there and shopping, and really don't see the value of what's happening behind the scenes. And that I also want to celebrate for the department as well, but also for the work that you've been doing, Bongiswa. So I'll just highlight 3 quick things about Bongiswa before we can cheers together and enjoy the night together. 3 things about Bongiswa that stands out for me, and I know it's probably very much also characterized by Professor Tomlison as well. Number 1, Bongiswa was a servant leader. And I say that this with such confidence is that she has got an ability to unlock ability in other people and really put people and see potential and put them into their strengths and develop them as economists. Many people don't know, but Bongiswa's program often has a turnaround of 2 to 3 years of young economists coming in. She trains them, she spends a lot of time with them, and then they leave. And then I've always see her after she's received a resignation letter as well as my own, but she always says that's for the best for the sector as a whole. And she's done amazing work also to develop many economists over the year. And then number 2, she's incredibly committed and really dedicated. And she was talking about the hours. And this is a funny thing she doesn't know, but at a point, myself and Andrew Partridge, economist, after about a year working for Bongiswa, we thought we're going to catch her out to see if there's any hour in the night that she doesn't reply to an email. And so at one point we thought 1 o'clock was the magic time. And then we would just send on purpose an email at 1 o'clock thinking, I'm burning the midnight oil, my boss is probably sleeping. But after 8 years, there's never been a time that Bongiswa doesn't reply to an email, and that also speaks to her responsiveness. And then just the third one, I mean, she's an expert in her field. As much as she really puts other people's interests above her own and incredibly dedicated, works hard behind the scenes, she's really an expert in her field, as you heard tonight. But also working with her, you shouldn't think because she pushes you out to perform that she wouldn't put you in your place if you come out with some flawed thinking or some stuff about economics that you didn't clearly thought out. And she's incredibly clever, but also she makes a plan. And that's really something that I really appreciate about Bongiswa. And so tonight, as we celebrate together, Bongiswa, we're really proud of you. Thank you for all the late nights and many hours. And really, it's just a time to celebrate what she's been doing in the public sector as a whole, but also for the whole fraternity of agricultural economics. So let's put our hands together for Bongiswa. Thank you very much.